I stood frozen in my darkened bedroom watching through the window as my son carried another box from my house to his truck. It was past midnight, and he thought I was 500 miles away visiting my sister in Phoenix. But I'd never left town. The elderly neighbor's warning echoed in my mind. Wait until midnight. You will see everything. Now I understood why my jewelry kept disappearing, why my bank statements looked strange, and why my daughter-in-law always insisted on doing my grocery shopping. 3 years had passed since I'd buried Robert, my husband of 42 years. The cancer took him quickly, leaving me alone in our 5-bedroom colonial house in Maple Grove, Connecticut. I thought I was lucky when my son Mark offered to move in temporarily with his wife Jennifer and their 2 teenagers, Emma and Tyler. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone right now." Mark had said, his eyes full of concern. At 45, he'd inherited his father's strong jawline and gentle demeanor. Or so I thought. Jennifer had been especially attentive. At 38, she was the daughter I'd never had always perfectly put together with her honey blonde hair and warm smile. "Let me handle the household management, Stacy," she'd insisted. "You need time to grieve properly." I was grateful. Running a household while mourning felt overwhelming, and Jennifer seemed so capable. She took over the grocery shopping, managed the cleaning service, and even organized my medications into those helpful daily containers. The first sign something was wrong came 6 months after they'd moved in. I'd been looking for my grandmother's silver spoons, the ones with the rose pattern that had been in our family for 4 generations. "Oh, those old things," Jennifer said when I asked. "I packed them away for safekeeping. The cleaning lady might steal them." But we'd used the same cleaning service for 15 years without incident. Still, I didn't want to seem difficult. Jennifer was helping so much. Then came the photo albums. Robert and I had documented 42 years of marriage in those albums. Birthdays, anniversaries, vacations to the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone. One afternoon, I went to show Emma her father's high school graduation pictures, but 3 albums were missing. "I reorganized everything," Jennifer explained. "Some of those old photos were getting damaged. I'll get them from storage later." Later never came. My unease grew when Jennifer started suggesting I downsize. We were sitting at my kitchen table, the one Robert had built in his workshop, when she brought it up again. "This house is just so big for one person," she said, stirring her coffee with one of my everyday spoons since the good silver was safely packed away. "Maintenance must be exhausting for you." "I manage fine," I replied, though something cold settled in my stomach. "Mark knows some excellent retirement communities, very upscale. You'd have friends your own age, activities, no more worrying about lawn care or repairs." I was only 68 and in perfect health. Why was she so eager to move me out of my home? The questions multiplied when Jennifer insisted on reviewing my finances. "Just to make sure everything's in order," she said. But afterward, I noticed discrepancies. Small amounts missing from my checking account. Charges I didn't remember making. "You've been forgetful lately," Jennifer said when I mentioned a $500 withdrawal I didn't recall. "Grief can affect memory. It's normal." Was it I'd run a household for over 4 decades, raised 3 children, and worked as a school principal until retirement? I'd never been forgetful about money. One evening, I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard Jennifer on the phone. She was in the living room speaking quietly but urgently. "She's getting suspicious. We need to move faster." My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, barely breathing. "No, the doctor appointment is Thursday. He'll prescribe what we discussed. I know Mark, but your mother's sharper than we expected. The house assessment already scheduled. Once she's declared incompetent, everything transfers smoothly." I crept back to my room, my heart hammering. Incompetent transfer. What were my son and daughter-in-law planning? That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every odd moment from the past months. The missing items, the financial discrepancies, Jennifer's push to move me out. A terrible picture was forming, but I couldn't believe it. Not Mark. Not my baby boy who'd cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart, who'd named his daughter after my mother. But the evidence was mounting. The next morning, I watched them more carefully. Mark avoided eye contact at breakfast. Jennifer's smiles seemed calculated, her concern manufactured. Even my grandchildren seemed uncomfortable, excusing themselves from meals, quickly spending more time in their rooms. I needed to know the truth, but I had to be careful. If they were planning something, tipping them off could accelerate their timeline. So I smiled, accepted Jennifer's help, and pretended everything was normal while my mind raced with plans. Trust is a fragile thing. Once cracked, every interaction becomes suspect, every kindness questioned. As I watched my son kiss my cheek before leaving for work, I wondered when exactly he'd decided I was worth more as a bank account than as a mother. The betrayal cut deeper than Robert's death. At least cancer was an enemy I could understand. This was my own flesh and blood treating me like prey. 2 weeks after overhearing that phone call, I woke up dizzy. The room spun when I tried to sit up, and nausea rolled through my stomach. I gripped the nightstand, waiting for the sensation to pass. "Mom." Mark appeared in my doorway, already dressed for work. "You okay?" "Just a little lightheaded, I managed." Jennifer materialized beside him, concern etched on her face. "This is the 3rd time this week. We should see a doctor." Had it been 3 times? I couldn't quite remember. My thoughts felt fuzzy, like trying to think through cotton. "I'll call Dr. Morrison," I said. I'd been seeing him for 20 years. "Actually," Jennifer interjected smoothly, "I found someone better. Dr. Harrison specializes in geriatric care. He comes highly recommended." Before I could protest, she'd scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Dr. Harrison's office was in a building I'd never noticed before, despite living in Maple Grove my whole life. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and despair. The doctor himself was younger than my son, with cold gray eyes that never quite met mine. "Mrs. Patterson," he said after a cursory examination, "you're showing signs of age-related cognitive decline. Very common. I'm prescribing something to help." "Cognitive decline," I repeated. "I'm just dizzy sometimes." "Dizziness, confusion, memory issues," he rattled off, making notes. "Jennifer mentioned you've been forgetful, misplacing things, having trouble with finances." I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come properly. When had thinking become so difficult? He handed Jennifer a prescription. "Make sure she takes these twice daily. They'll help stabilize her condition." The pills were large and white, unmarked. Jennifer cheerfully dispensed them each morning and evening, watching to ensure I swallowed. Within days, my symptoms worsened. I slept 14, sometimes 16 hours. When awake, I struggled to form coherent thoughts. Names escaped me. I'd walk into rooms and forget why. "The medication needs time to work," Jennifer assured me, patting my hand. "Dr. Harrison said you might feel worse before you feel better." Meals became ordeals. Food had no taste, and I could barely hold a spoon steady. Jennifer started feeding me soup, cooing like I was an infant. The humiliation burned through the fog of medication. My friend Margaret visited on a Thursday. We'd known each other since our children were in elementary school together. She took one look at me and gasped. "Stacy, honey, what's wrong with you?" I tried to explain about feeling tired, but the words came out jumbled. Jennifer swooped in with explanations about my condition and how they were managing it. Margaret's expression hardened. "I'd like to speak with Stacy alone." "Of course," Jennifer said sweetly, but her eyes glittered dangerously. "Just remember, she gets confused easily. Don't take everything she says seriously." Once alone, Margaret gripped my hands. This isn't right. You were fine last month. What medications are they giving you? I pointed to the pill bottle on my nightstand. Margaret examined it, frowning at the lack of labeling. She slipped one pill into her purse. My David's a pharmacist, she whispered. Let me have him look at this. 2 days later, Margaret returned while Jennifer was grocery shopping. Her face was pale, hands shaking as she sat on my bed. Stacy, these aren't vitamins or cognitive enhancers. David ran tests. They're powerful sedatives mixed with benzodiazepines. The dosage you're on would tranquilize a horse. They're designed to make you seem incompetent. The fog in my brain couldn't quite process this. But, why, I don't know, honey, but you need to stop taking them, now. She helped me flush that morning's dose and showed me how to pretend to swallow while hiding the pills under my tongue. It was harder than it sounded in my impaired state, but desperation motivated me. I'll check on you every day, Margaret promised. If something happens to me, you'll know they're onto us. The next morning, I managed the deception. Jennifer watched me take the pills, then left satisfied. I spit them into a tissue and hid them in my drawer. By evening, my head felt slightly clearer. Not normal, but better. Each day without the medication brought more clarity and with it, horror. I remembered conversations I'd apparently had about signing papers giving Mark financial power of attorney, agreeing to tours of nursing facilities. None of it felt real, but Jennifer showed me documents with my shaky signature. You were very clear about your wishes, she said. You don't want to be a burden. I'd never said that. Would never say that. My house was paid for. I had savings investments Robert had carefully planned. I wasn't a burden to anyone. But arguing seemed dangerous. If they knew I was recovering, they might try something else. So I played along. Let Jennifer feed me soup, pretended confusion when it suited me all, while the chemicals slowly left my system. Margaret visited daily, always when Jennifer was out. She brought articles about elder abuse, financial exploitation, how adult children could manipulate aging parents. Each story sounded horrifyingly familiar. You need to document everything, she urged. Keep a journal. Take pictures of those pills. Record conversations if you can. I started writing in an old notebook I found in my nightstand, my handwriting growing steadier each day. I photographed the unmarked pills, the prescriptions Dr. Harrison had written, the documents Jennifer claimed I'd signed. My phone, which Jennifer hadn't thought to take away, became my lifeline to sanity. One afternoon, feigning sleep, I heard Mark and Jennifer arguing in the hallway. She's not declining fast enough, Jennifer hissed. Your mother has the constitution of an ox. Increase the dosage, Mark replied coldly. This voice, devoid of warmth or concern, belonged to a stranger wearing my son's face. Too risky. If she dies suddenly, there'll be an autopsy. We need her alive but incompetent when we file for guardianship. Guardianship. The word sent ice through my veins. If they gained legal control, I'd disappear into some facility, drugged into oblivion, while they sold my house, drained my accounts, erased my existence. I wouldn't let that happen. But first I needed to understand the full scope of their plan, and for that, I had to get away from their constant surveillance. The idea came while watching a travel show about Phoenix. My sister Carol lived there, had been asking me to visit since Robert's funeral. It would be natural to want to see her. That evening at dinner, I mentioned feeling homesick for Carol. Maybe I should visit her, I said vaguely, pushing peas around my plate. Jennifer exchanged a quick glance with Mark. Oh, Stacy, I don't think you're well enough to travel. It's just Phoenix, direct flight. Carol would take care of me. They discussed it in hushed tones while I pretended to doze in my chair. Finally, Jennifer approached with a bright smile. You know what? Maybe a change of scenery would do you good. We'll arrange everything. Of course they would. Because a confused old woman traveling alone might never make it back. Or perhaps they simply wanted me out of the house to accelerate their plans. Either way, I'd given them what they wanted while creating my own opportunity. As Jennifer booked flights and fussed over my packing, I made my own preparations. Margaret would help. Harold from next door, who'd been watching the strange comings and goings, would be my eyes. They thought they were sending away a drugged, compliant victim. Instead, they were releasing a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and my son and daughter-in-law had no idea what was coming. The morning of my supposed departure arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood. Jennifer bustled around, checking my suitcase for the third time, while Mark loaded it into their SUV. "Now remember," Jennifer said, pressing my pill container into my carry-on, "take these on schedule. Carol knows about your condition. She'll help remind you." I nodded vaguely, clutching my purse. Inside was $800 in cash I'd managed to withdraw during a confused trip to the bank, where I'd also secretly opened a new account they didn't know about. At the airport, they walked me to security like prison guards escorting an inmate. Mark hugged me stiffly. "Have a good trip, Mom. We'll take care of everything here." "I'm sure you will," I thought, maintaining my vacant smile. Once through security, I found a bathroom and changed clothes, stuffing my recognizable purple cardigan into the trash. I put on the plain gray jacket Margaret had smuggled to me and tucked my hair under a baseball cap. Then I walked past my gate and straight to the taxi stand. "Riverside Motel," I told the driver. It was a clean but unremarkable place on the opposite side of town where Jennifer would never think to look. The room was small but safe. I paid cash for 3 nights, gave a fake name, and finally allowed myself to breathe. Then I called Margaret. "I'm at the motel," I said when she answered. "Thank God. Harold's been watching your house. He says there's been activity already. A van pulled up an hour after they got back from the airport." My stomach churned. They hadn't wasted any time. That evening, I took a cab to my neighborhood, having the driver drop me 2 streets over. I crept through the Miller's backyard, past the Johnsons' garden shed, until I reached Harold's back door. He was waiting, his weathered face creased with concern. At 82, Harold had buried 2 wives and survived cancer. Nothing much surprised him anymore, but what he'd witnessed at my house had shaken him. "Stacy, they're treating your home like it's already theirs," he said, pouring me tea in his kitchen. "That Van Estate Sale Company, they were photographing your furniture." My hands shook as I lifted the cup. "While I'm supposedly visiting my sister. There's more." He pulled out a notebook filled with careful handwriting. "I've been documenting everything for weeks. Strange cars arriving late at night. Your son carrying boxes to his vehicle. Jennifer meeting with people in business suits. He'd recorded dates, times, license plates. Harold had been a forensic accountant before retirement. Old habits died hard. Tonight's important," he continued. "I heard Jennifer on your back patio yesterday talking on her phone. She mentioned midnight specifically. Said something about the final walkthrough. Midnight, 5 hours away." "I need to see what happens," I said. Harold studied me over his bifocals. "Figured you'd say that. There's a good view from my garden shed. It backs up to your property line." We spent the evening preparing. Harold showed me the shed's window that overlooked my backyard and kitchen. He'd even put a cushion on the storage box for comfortable surveillance. As darkness fell, I thought about all the midnights I'd spent in that house, waiting up for teenage Mark to come home, celebrating New Year's with Robert. Now I was hiding in a shed, spying on my own life. At 11:45, we took our positions. The night was clear and cold. Through the window, I could see my kitchen illuminated figures moving inside. Then car doors slammed. Multiple vehicles had arrived. "Look," Harold whispered. People streamed into my house through the back door, business suits despite the hour. Jennifer greeted them like a hostess at a cocktail party. Mark was there too, shaking hands, smiling broadly. Then I saw them touring groups through my home. Jennifer gestured at my china cabinet, the one Robert's mother had left us. A woman in pearls examined my wedding crystal. A man photographed the dimensions of the dining room. "Estate sale preview," Harold murmured. "They're showing the house contents to high-end buyers." But it got worse. Through the window, I watched Jennifer hand out brochures. When one blew into the yard later, I'd see it advertised complete estate liquidation and premium nursing home placement services. They weren't just selling my things, they were selling my removal. Mark led a couple upstairs, presumably to show the bedrooms. My bedroom, where I'd slept beside Robert for decades, where my children were conceived, where I'd cried myself to sleep after the funeral. Now strangers evaluated it like merchandise. The final blow came when Dr. Harrison arrived. He joined Jennifer in the kitchen, spreading papers on my table. Even from distance, I could see official seals, medical letterhead. They were finalizing the incompetency documentation. "The court date's set," I heard Jennifer say when she stepped onto the patio for air. 2 weeks. She'll be at Carol's, confused about dates. We'll claim she's been deteriorating for months. Harrison's testimony will seal it. My knees nearly buckled. 2 weeks to save my life. The gathering lasted until nearly 2 in the morning. As cars departed, I memorized faces, noted license plates in Harold's notebook. These vultures circling my life would regret their greed. When the house finally went dark, Harold helped me back to his kitchen. My whole body shook with rage and betrayal. "I have a friend," Harold said quietly. "Former federal investigator. Retired, but still has connections. This is interstate fraud, Stacy. Crossing state lines makes it federal jurisdiction." "They're my family." I whispered the words, tasting like ash. "No," Harold said firmly. "Family doesn't do this. These are criminals who happen to share your DNA." He was right. The son I'd raised was gone, replaced by this stranger who viewed me as an obstacle to wealth. But I wouldn't go quietly into whatever dark facility they'd chosen. I'd fight with everything I had. Harold drove me back to the motel, promising to maintain surveillance. In my small room, I sat on the bed and opened the notebook I'd started. Every detail from tonight went onto paper. Times, dates, faces, overheard conversations. Then I called Carol my real sister, not the fictional visit Jennifer had concocted. "I need you to play along if anyone calls," I explained. "Pretend I'm there, but confused about dates." "Stacy, what's going on?" I told her everything. The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "That bastard," she finally spit. "Robert would rise from his grave if he knew what Mark was doing. What do you need?" We strategized until dawn. Carol would maintain the fiction while secretly flying out to help. She had a friend in the Connecticut Attorney General's office. We'd build a case so airtight that Mark and Jennifer would spend their best years behind bars. As sunrise painted the motel room gold, I thought about transformation. Caterpillars dissolved completely before becoming butterflies, breaking down into soup before reforming. That's what I was doing. The trusting mother was dissolving. What would emerge was someone harder, smarter, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting herself. Jennifer thought she'd married into money. Instead, she'd married into a war she couldn't win. Because unlike her, I had decades of experience, genuine friends, and the kind of rage that only comes from a mother's broken heart. The midnight discovery had shown me the truth. Now it was time to show them exactly who they'd underestimated. The sweet, confused old lady was gone. In her place stood a woman with nothing to lose and justice to gain. 3 days into my stay at the motel, I knew I needed more evidence. Harold's surveillance and my observations were damning, but I needed physical proof of their crimes. The solution was risky but necessary. I had to get inside my own house while they were gone. Jennifer maintained a rigid schedule. Tuesday mornings meant yoga class from 9 to 11, then lunch with her mother. Mark would be showing houses until evening. The teenagers were at school. I had a window. I still had my keys, though I assumed they'd change the lock soon. At 9:15, I stood at my own back door, heart pounding. The key slid in smoothly. They hadn't bothered yet, so confident in their plan. My house felt foreign. Jennifer had already started redecorating. My family photos were gone from the mantel, replaced by modern art prints. The cozy Afghans I'd crocheted were nowhere to be seen. It was like being erased in real time. I forced myself to focus. Mark's home office was the logical starting point. The door was locked, but I knew my son. He'd used the same hiding spot for spare keys since childhood. Sure enough, the key was taped under the bottom desk drawer in the hallway. His office looked like command central for a military operation. Whiteboards covered with timelines, files labeled with my name stacked on every surface. I photographed everything, then started with the nearest folder. The first document stopped my heart. A power of attorney dated 6 months ago, granting Mark complete control of my finances and medical decisions. My signature was at the bottom, but I'd never seen this paper before. I held it to the light. Even to my untrained eye, the signature looked wrong. Too steady for someone supposedly suffering from cognitive decline. Next came medical evaluations from Dr. Harrison. According to these reports, I'd been diagnosed with severe dementia, Alzheimer's, and various other conditions that would render me incompetent. Each evaluation was more damning than the last, painting a picture of a woman who couldn't manage basic daily tasks. Patient unable to recall current date, one read. Shows significant confusion about family members. Recommends immediate full-time care facility placement. The dates were telling. Some evaluations were dated before I'd ever met Dr. Harrison. They'd created an entire medical history of decline, backdated to make it seem like a gradual process. In a locked drawer, I found correspondence that made my blood boil. Letters between Mark and Harrison discussing payment schedules. Jennifer had introduced them at her gym, where Harrison apparently supplemented his income by providing specialized medical documentation for families seeking guardianship over elderly relatives. Standard rate applies, one email read. Full documentation package including court testimony, $50,000. Half upfront, half upon successful guardianship ruling. $50,000 to steal my life. But the worst was yet to come. Hidden behind other files, I found a folder marked Insurance. Inside was a life insurance policy I'd never purchased, taken out 13 months ago, right after Robert's death. $2 million payable to Mark upon my death. The policy documents included a medical exam I'd never taken, forms I'd never filled out. Everything forged but professionally done. They'd thought of everything. If the guardianship failed, if I proved too difficult to control, there was always Plan B. My hands trembled as I photographed page after page. How long had Mark been planning this? Had he started before Robert's death, or had grief and greed corrupted him after? A sound from outside made me freeze. Car door. I peeked through the blinds. Jennifer's yoga friend dropping her off. She was back early. I shoved papers back into folders, trying to remember exact positions. The office door clicked locked behind me. Key returned to its hiding spot. I could hear Jennifer's key in the front door as I slipped out the back. Instead of running, I ducked into the pool house. Through its window, I watched Jennifer enter the kitchen and pour herself wine. At 11 in the morning, the stress of criminal conspiracy must be getting to her. She picked up her phone and I held my breath, wondering if she'd somehow sensed my presence. But she just scrolled, sipping wine, looking like any suburban housewife. After 20 minutes, she headed upstairs. I crept out and made it to Harold's yard, then worked my way back to where I'd left my taxi, waiting 2 streets over. Back at the motel, I spread my phone across the bed, examining each photographed document. The scope of their plan was breathtaking. They'd created an entire paper trail of my supposed decline, complete with witnessed signatures from Jennifer's friends who'd sworn they'd seen me sign documents I'd never touched. Margaret arrived that afternoon with supplies, a burner phone, a laptop she'd bought with cash, and contact information for her nephew who worked in elder law. "He says what they're doing is more common than people think," she explained. "Adult children viewing aging parents as ATMs. But this level of coordination, the forged medical documents, the life insurance fraud, this is major federal crime territory." We spent hours organizing evidence, creating digital backups, preparing documentation. Margaret's nephew recommended a forensic document examiner who could prove the signatures were forged. Every piece of evidence got cataloged and copied. That evening, Harold called with urgent news. "They had a meeting," he said. "Jennifer, Mark, and 2 men in suits. Looked like lawyers. They were celebrating something." My stomach sank. "What kind of celebration?" "I heard them toasting to Phase 1 complete. They mentioned the court date got moved up. It's this Friday, Stacy, 4 days from now." 4 days. They must have pulled strings, greased palms. A rush job to get guardianship before I could interfere. "There's more," Harold continued. "After the lawyers left, I heard Mark on the phone with someone called Sunny Acres. That's the nursing home on Route 9, the one that got investigated for patient abuse last year. Of course, they'd chosen the worst place possible. Somewhere that would take cash to look the other way, keep me sedated, not ask questions when I inevitably died from complications. That night I lay in my motel bed planning. They thought they had 4 days to finish stealing my life. What they actually had was 4 days before I destroyed theirs. But I needed help. Real help. Harold's investigator friend. Carol's attorney general contact. Margaret's nephew. It was time to assemble my own team. Because Jennifer had been right about one thing during those awful tea parties where she'd discussed my future. I did have valuable assets. Not just money and property, but decades of connections, friendships, professional relationships. Mark and Jennifer had spent months building their criminal network. I had days to build my justice brigade. But I had something they didn't: righteous fury, and the kind of friends who drive through hell to help each other. The forged documents would be their downfall. Every fake signature, every backdated medical form, every lie they'd put on paper was evidence of their guilt. They'd been so thorough in documenting my supposed incompetence that they'd actually documented their own crimes in detail. 4 days. Time to turn from prey to predator. Time to show them what 42 years of marriage to a strategic planner had taught me. Robert always said I'd have made an excellent general. Now I'd find out if he was right. The war for my life was entering its final phase, and I intended to win. Wednesday morning arrived with Dorothy Chen at my motel door. Harold's friend stood barely 5 feet tall, but her presence filled the room. 30 years with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division had given her an aura of quiet authority. "Harold filled me in," she said, settling into the rickety motel chair like it was a throne. "Show me what you've got." For 2 hours, I walked her through everything: the forged signatures, the insurance fraud, the medical conspiracies. Dorothy took notes in shorthand, occasionally whistling low at particularly egregious evidence. "This is RICO territory," she said finally. "Racketeering, conspiracy, wire fraud crossing state lines. Your son and daughter-in-law built themselves a criminal enterprise. Can you help?" Dorothy smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Retirement's been boring anyway, but we need more than documents. We need them actively committing crimes recorded and witnessed." She produced a set of tiny cameras from her bag. "Latest tech. Wi-Fi enabled, motion activated. We'll turn your house into a production studio." The plan was elegant. I'd returned from my trip early, acting more confused than ever. Meanwhile, we'd document every criminal act in high definition. I'll need to get these installed without them knowing, I said. Leave that to me and Harold, Dorothy replied, former accountant and FBI agent. We've got skills. That afternoon, while Jennifer was at her Pilates class and Mark showed houses, Dorothy and Harold became breaking and entering heroes. They installed cameras in the living room, kitchen, Mark's office, and the hallway. Each device was smaller than a button, invisible, unless you knew where to look. Dorothy's nephew, a tech wizard, set up a secure server where footage would automatically upload. Even if they find the cameras, the evidence is already preserved, he explained over video chat. Carol flew in that evening, my cavalry arriving when I needed her most. My sister had inherited our father's temper and our mother's strategic mind, a dangerous combination when her family was threatened. I spoke to my friend at the Attorney General's office, she said, unpacking files in my motel room. They're very interested. Elder abuse is a priority issue. Add insurance fraud and forged legal documents, they're salivating. But we needed to be careful. Moving too fast might spook Mark and Jennifer into destroying evidence or fleeing. We had to let them think their plan was working while building an airtight case. Thursday morning, I made the call. Jennifer, it's Mom. I'm at the airport in Phoenix. I'm confused about my flight. Oh, Stacy! Jennifer's voice dripped false concern. Stay put. We'll figure this out. An hour later, she called back. I've booked you a flight home this afternoon. Mark will pick you up. Just stay at the gate, okay? Don't wander off. The trap was baited. Harold picked me up from the motel and drove me to the airport. I waited until the flight Jennifer had booked actually landed, then emerged from the gate area looking disheveled and confused, dragging my suitcase. Mark was waiting, his face a mask of fake worry. Mom, we were so concerned. How are you feeling? Tired, I mumbled. When did I go to Phoenix? I can't remember. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Let's get you home. During the drive, I perfected my performance, staring vacantly out windows, asking the same questions, repeatedly fumbling with my seatbelt. Mark kept shooting me assessing glances, probably calculating how much more deterioration they needed to document. At the house, Jennifer rushed out, clutching her chest dramatically. Thank goodness you're safe! We were worried sick. Sure you were, I thought, letting her guide me inside like an invalid. The cameras were working perfectly. Dorothy texted updates to my burner phone, which I kept hidden. She was watching the live feed from her hotel room, recording everything. That evening provided our first major evidence. I pretended to doze on the couch while Mark and Jennifer discussed their plans in the kitchen. Did you see her at the airport? Jennifer asked. She's perfect. No judge would question her need for guardianship. The hearing's tomorrow at 2, Mark replied. Harrison will testify at 3. By dinner, we'll have full control. What about the insurance physical? She needs to be coherent enough to pass basic health screening. Next month. We'll reduce her medications for a few days, get her lucid enough to satisfy requirements, then back to the full dose. They were discussing my drugging schedule like a livestock feeding plan. I fought to keep my breathing steady, my face slack. Later, I watched from my bedroom window as Harold worked in his garden, Dorothy beside him pretending to admire his roses. She flashed a subtle thumbs up. Everything was being recorded. That night I found more evidence. While Jennifer ran errands and Mark worked late, I discovered a hidden safe in the basement. The combination was their anniversary date, touchingly sentimental for criminals. Inside were the original versions of all the forged documents' practice signatures, where someone had tried to copy my handwriting and Jennifer's handwritten notes, planning the entire scheme. She'd even created a timeline. Month 1-3 establish need for help. Month 4-6 introduce medications. Month 7-9 document decline. Month 10-12 obtain guardianship. Month 13+ liquidate assets. They'd plotted my destruction like a business plan. I photographed everything careful to return items exactly as found. The safe also contained something unexpected correspondence from Jennifer's first marriage. Apparently, her elderly father-in-law had died under suspicious circumstances, leaving her a substantial inheritance. The pattern was chilling. Friday morning dawned bright and cruel. Court day. Jennifer fussed over my appearance, selecting a dowdy house coat that made me look helpless. "You're staying home today," she informed me. "You're not feeling well." "Of course not. Can't have the allegedly incompetent person actually attending their competency hearing." As they prepared to leave, I shuffled to the bathroom, making sure to stumble slightly for the cameras. Inside, I texted Dorothy, "They're leaving for court now." "Perfect," came the reply. "Time for phase 2. While Mark and Jennifer sat in court telling lies about my mental state, Dorothy's FBI colleagues were obtaining warrants. My evidence, combined with their interstate fraud investigation, had fast-tracked everything. I maintained my act, sitting in the living room staring at a television that wasn't on. The cameras captured everything me alone and allegedly incompetent while my family attempted to steal my life in a courtroom across town. At 1:30, Dorothy texted, "Judges love surprise witnesses. Showtime." Harold drove me to the courthouse where Carol and Dorothy waited with a team of federal agents. My transformation in the bathroom was quick but complete. Off came the house coat, replaced by my best suit. Hair-pinned neat makeup applied posture straight. "Ready?" Dorothy asked. I thought of Robert, of the life we'd built, of the trust I'd placed in our son. All of it betrayed for money. "Let's end this," I said. We entered the courtroom just as Dr. Harrison was beginning his testimony about my severe cognitive decline. The look on Mark's face when he saw me walk in clear-eyed and furious was worth every moment of pain. But the best part was Jennifer's expression when she spotted the federal agents behind me. She knew exactly what their presence meant. The hunter had just realized she was the hunted, and there was nowhere left to run. The courtroom fell silent as I walked down the aisle. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a woman I'd known professionally during my years as a principal, looked up from the documents with surprise. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, "according to these petitioners, you're unable to care for yourself or appear in court." "Your Honor," I said clearly, "I'd like to address that claim along with several others being made today." Mark shot to his feet. "Mom's confused. She shouldn't be here. She's sick." "Sit down, Mr. Patterson," Judge Hernandez commanded. "I'll decide who speaks in my courtroom." Jennifer grabbed Mark's arm, her face pale. She'd seen the federal agents position themselves by the exits. Dr. Harrison shifted nervously in the witness chair, sweat beading on his forehead. "Your Honor." Dorothy stepped forward. Dorothy Chen, retired FBI, representing Mrs. Patterson. "We'd like to submit new evidence regarding this guardianship petition." "Objection." Mark's lawyer, a slick man named Brennan, stood. "This is highly irregular. We haven't had time to review any new evidence." "Neither did I said, "when your clients forged my signature on legal documents and slowly poisoned me with illegally prescribed medications." The judge's eyes sharpened. "Those are serious allegations, Mrs. Patterson." "Yes, they are." Carol handed Dorothy a thick folder which she presented to the judge. "Your Honor, this contains documented evidence of conspiracy to commit elder abuse, insurance fraud, forgery, and attempted murder." "Murder," Dr. Harrison squeaked from the witness stand. What else would you call administering dangerous combinations of sedatives to an elderly woman without her informed consent?" Dorothy asked coolly. "Especially when combined with a $2 million life insurance policy she never authorized." Judge Hernandez began reviewing the documents. Her expression darkened with each page. "This court will take a 15-minute recess. Federal agents, please ensure all parties remain present." "We're leaving," Jennifer announced, standing. "No, ma'am, you're not." Agent Rodriguez, Dorothy's former colleague, blocked her path. "Please remain seated." During recess, I watched my son and daughter-in-law whisper frantically with their lawyer. Dr. Harrison sat frozen, clearly calculating whether cooperation might earn him a lighter sentence. The federal agents stood like sentinels, ensuring no one fled. When court reconvened, Judge Hernandez looked grim. "I've reviewed the submitted evidence. Mrs. Patterson, are you prepared to testify about these allegations?" "I am, Your Honor." I took the witness stand, the same chair where Harrison had been painting me as a helpless invalid. The bailiff swore me in and I began telling my story. I described the slow realization that things were disappearing, the financial discrepancies, Jennifer's insistence on managing my health care, the conversation I'd overheard about moving faster. "When did you realize you were being drugged?" the judge asked. "My friend Margaret had her pharmacist's son analyze the pills. They weren't vitamins or cognitive enhancers. They were powerful sedatives designed to make me appear incompetent." I explained about pretending to travel, watching the midnight estate sale preview, finding the forged documents and insurance policies. Dorothy presented each piece of evidence as I spoke. Photographs, documents, Harold's detailed surveillance notes. "Your Honor," Dorothy said, "we also have video evidence from the past 48 hours showing the conspirators discussing their crimes." The first video played on the courtroom screen. Mark and Jennifer in my kitchen planning my medication schedule around the insurance physical. Jennifer's voice rang clear. She needs to be coherent enough to pass basic screening, then back to full dose. The second video was worse. Jennifer on the phone with Sunny Akers negotiating my placement. "She won't be any trouble. The medications keep her manageable. How soon can you take her?" By the third video, Jennifer had her head in her hands. It showed her practicing my signature at Mark's desk, comparing it to genuine documents, perfecting the forgery. "Would you like to explain this, Mrs. Patterson?" Judge Hernandez asked Mark's wife. Jennifer looked up, tears streaming. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. We just needed money. Mark's business was failing. We were going to lose our house." "So you decided to steal mine?" I asked from the witness stand. "You have so much," Jennifer exploded. "That big house, all that money just sitting there while we struggled. You were going to die anyway. Why shouldn't we inherit something?" The courtroom gasped. Even Mark looked horrified at his wife's outburst. "I wasn't dying," I said quietly, "until you started poisoning me." Dr. Harrison suddenly spoke up. "I want to make a deal. I'll testify. Tell everything." Jennifer approached me 6 months ago, said her mother-in-law was wealthy but stubborn, offered $50,000 to provide documentation supporting incompetency. I never examined Mrs. Patterson properly. All those medical reports were fabricated. Mark turned on Harrison. "Shut up. You're violating patient confidentiality." "What patient?" Dorothy interjected. "Your mother was never legitimately under his care. Those examinations were fraud." Judge Hernandez had heard enough. "This guardianship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm referring this entire matter to the Attorney General for criminal prosecution." "Your Honor." Agent Rodriguez stepped forward. "We have federal warrants for Mark Patterson, Jennifer Patterson, and Dr. Eugene Harrison. Charges include conspiracy to commit elder abuse insurance fraud forgery and interstate wire fraud." The arrests happened quickly. Jennifer sobbed as they handcuffed her, alternating between begging for forgiveness and blaming everyone else. Dr. Harrison went quietly, already calculating his plea bargain. But Mark fought. "Mom, please," he shouted as agents cuffed him. "I'm your son, your only son. Dad would want you to help me." That broke my composure. "Don't you dare invoke your father. Robert would be disgusted. He worked hard his entire life to build what we had, and you tried to steal it because your business failed, because you were too proud to ask for help." I didn't want to steal. Jennifer said you were getting older anyway, that we were just advancing our inheritance. She said you'd want us to have it. I would have helped you, I said, tears finally coming. If you'd asked, I'd have given you money, but you didn't ask. You plotted, you poisoned, you tried to lock me away. Mark's shoulders sagged as the truth hit him. He'd destroyed his family for money he could have had honestly. But Jennifer had whispered poison in his ear, and he'd chosen to listen. As they led him away, he looked back once. I'm sorry, Mom. Too little, too late. Sorry doesn't undo months of drugging. Sorry doesn't erase the terror of thinking I was losing my mind. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust between a mother and son. The courtroom slowly emptied. Emma and Tyler, my grandchildren, had been kept away from the proceedings. They were with Jennifer's mother, innocent victims in their parents' crimes. I'd make sure they were cared for, but those relationships would need time to heal. Judge Hernandez approached me after adjournment. Stacy, I'm deeply sorry this happened to you. If you need anything during the criminal proceedings, please reach out. Outside the courthouse, photographers snapped pictures as the conspirators were loaded into federal vehicles. Tomorrow's headlines would scream about the family who tried to steal their mother's life. Dorothy, Carol, Margaret, and Harold surrounded me on the courthouse steps. My true family, the ones who'd fought for me when blood relatives tried to destroy me. It's over, Carol said, squeezing my hand. The legal part, I corrected. The healing will take longer. But I was alive, free, and vindicated. The trap had been sprung, the criminals caught, and justice served. Sometimes that's all you can ask for when your whole world betrays you. As we walked to Harold's car, I felt Robert's presence. Not in some mystical way, but in the strength he'd helped me build over 42 years. That strength had saved me when our son tried to bury me alive. The grandmother they'd tried to erase was still standing, bruised, betrayed, but not broken. Never broken. 6 months later, I sat in the gallery of another courtroom watching justice unfold. The federal prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Angela Morrison, had built an airtight case. The evidence we'd gathered proved invaluable, but the investigation had uncovered even more. Jennifer, it turned out, had done this before. Her first husband's father had died mysteriously after changing his will in her favor. The investigation into my case had reopened that cold case, revealing a pattern of elder abuse spanning years. The defendant, Jennifer Patterson, systematically targeted vulnerable elderly relatives, Angela told the jury. She researched drugs that would mimic dementia. She cultivated relationships with corrupt medical professionals. She viewed aging family members not as people deserving respect, but as obstacles to wealth. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, guilty on all counts. When the judge read Jennifer's sentence, 25 years, she collapsed. No tears this time, just the hollow shock of someone finally facing consequences. Mark's trial came next. His lawyer painted him as a victim of Jennifer's manipulation, a desperate businessman who'd made terrible choices under his wife's influence. There was some truth to it. The investigation revealed Jennifer had hidden the worst of their financial troubles until Mark was desperate enough to consider anything. But desperation didn't excuse attempted murder. The prosecutor played the videos of Mark coldly discussing my medication schedule, calculating how much deterioration they needed to document. The jury saw him for what he'd become, a son who'd chosen money over mother. 15 years. As they led him away, Mark looked at me once. I saw my little boy in his eyes, the child who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers. That boy was gone, buried under greed and poor choices. I mourned him even as I celebrated justice. Dr. Harrison cooperated, fully testifying against his co-conspirators in exchange for a reduced sentence. 10 years with possibility of parole in 7. His medical license was permanently revoked. He'd never harm another elderly patient. The house felt different after the trials. I'd had it professionally cleaned, Jennifer's touches erased, my family photos restored, but ghosts lingered in every room. Robert's presence comforting, Mark's betrayal suffocating. Harold helped me decide. "It's just walls and memories," he said over tea one afternoon. "You can make new memories somewhere else." He was right. I sold the house to a lovely young family who promised to fill it with laughter. The proceeds, along with the insurance money that had been meant as my death benefit, went into a new venture, the Safe Harbor Foundation, dedicated to preventing elder abuse. We provided resources for seniors suspecting exploitation-funded investigations and offered safe temporary housing for those fleeing abusive situations. Margaret ran the day-to-day operations with her typical efficiency. My new home was smaller but perfect. A 2-bedroom cottage in a secure senior community where neighbors looked out for each other. Harold lived 3 doors down. We took evening walks, shared meals, and slowly became more than friends. Robert would have approved. He'd never wanted me to be alone. Emma and Tyler lived with Jennifer's mother now. The courts had terminated their parents' rights, protecting the children from further trauma. I saw them monthly, rebuilding relationships carefully. They'd been told their parents were sick, needed time away to get better. Someday they'd learn the full truth. For now, they needed stability and love. Tyler showed me his report card during one visit. Straight A's in mathematics. "I want to be an accountant like Mr. Harold," he announced. "He says accountants protect people's money from bad guys." Smart kid. He'd learned early that not all threats come from strangers. Emma was quieter, artistic. She painted watercolors of flowers and gave them to residents at my community. "Grandma Stacy," she said one day, "I'm glad you're okay. Mom used to say mean things about you, but I knew they weren't true. Children see more than we think." I hugged her tight, promising silently that she'd never face what I had. The foundation would make sure of it. A year after the trials, I received a letter from prison. Mark's handwriting shaky but recognizable. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I write this knowing I destroyed everything Dad built, everything you taught me. Jennifer says I'm weak for feeling guilty. Maybe I am, but I need you to know the guilt eats me alive. I dream about that night you stood in court strong and clear-eyed. You fought back. You won. I'm proud of you even though I have no right to be. The boys here respect what you did. Word travels in prison. They know I tried to hurt my mother and got caught. There's a code here. Mothers are sacred. I'm learning that too late. Don't write back. Don't visit. Use your energy for good things. Just know that somewhere in this cell, your son remembers who he used to be and hates who he became. I'm sorry. Forever sorry. Mark." I kept the letter but didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But I hoped Mark would use his time to become someone better. Everyone deserves a second chance, even if it comes behind bars. Life at 70 looked different than I'd imagined. I'd thought I'd have family dinners with Mark, watch my grandchildren grow up surrounded by love, maybe travel with Robert to places we'd always planned to see. Instead, I had Harold's gentle companionship, true friends who'd prove their loyalty, and a mission that gave meaning to my pain. The Safe Harbor Foundation had helped dozens of seniors in its first year. Every person saved from what I'd endured made the betrayal worthwhile. "You're a phoenix," Harold told me one evening as we watched the sunset. "Rose from ashes stronger than before." We both did, I reminded him. He'd lost 2 wives to cancer, survived his own health scares, and still found energy to help a neighbor in need. That's the thing about survivors. We recognize each other. My story spread beyond the courtroom. News outlets picked it up as an example of the growing elder abuse epidemic. I gave interviews, testified before Congress about strengthening protections for seniors, and spoke at conferences. If my pain could prevent others suffering, I'd share it widely. But the best moments were quiet ones. Teaching Emma to knit on Sunday afternoons, helping Tyler with his math homework, dancing with Harold at the community center. Small joys that Jennifer and Mark had tried to steal. They'd failed because they'd underestimated me, saw an elderly widow and assumed weakness. But age brings more than vulnerability. It brings wisdom, patience, and the kind of strength that comes from surviving decades of life's storms. At 70, I was starting fresh. New home, new purpose, new love. The woman who'd stood frozen in her bedroom that midnight watching her son steal from her had transformed. No longer a victim, but a victor. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. New case. Daughter in Michigan drugging her father. Can you talk to him? He's scared. On my way, I typed back. Because that's what phoenixes do. We rise, we soar, and we light the way for others trying to escape their own ashes. Robert always said I'd make a good general. Turns out I made a better warrior. And the war against elder abuse had just begun. To everyone reading this, have you ever experienced a family betrayal that changed your life? How did you find the strength to fight back and rebuild? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else going through similar struggles. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to the reality of elder abuse, please give it a like and share it with others who need to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and justice, and remember to ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next upload. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to triumph. Remember, you're never too old to fight for your dignity, and true family isn't always blood. It's the people who stand by you when the world tries to tear you down. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and never let anyone make you feel powerless. You have more strength than you know.